So we're going to again do a little bit of text manipulation, right? So I'm just gonna create a new file here, Control N, right? And OK, advanced options. I'll just stay with background color, which is white, right? So I have this kind of background, and I'm going to do something like this. You notice that when you do the other day we did the Noblesse layout, right? So you did a few diagrams for comics. But you also notice that when in a comic, usually there will be certain, you can't really say dialogues, but text which are like, for example, very dramatic scenes, like for example, someone getting punched, or maybe there's an accident or something, so there's kaboom or boom or swoosh or something. And so these texts are not normally written like normal text. Usually there'll be like, there'll be outline, and then this much bigger text, that kind of thing. And sometimes they are slightly slanted or slightly curved or something like that, right? So we're going to try to do that today, right? First things first is just I'm gonna write the text. Needless to say, for this, right, you want to get the font face correct, meaning to say that you want to get the correct font face, like, whatever that looks the most comic-ish, right? If that makes sense. So I'm just gonna write, for example, I'm just gonna write kaboom here. Kaboom! Right? So we get that. Now, hopefully you still remember from when we did the path previously, meaning we did the curve, when we did the logo thing, right? We had a circle, and then we let the text coincide with the circle, meaning it's a curved text. So we can do something like that. You can just create a path, right? Just like that. Create a path. It's just that in terms of GIMP, this path thingy is still very much glitchy. I mean, it's an open source software, so it's a bit glitchy. I'll show you what I mean. Now we have this path, it's unnamed, right? So I'm just gonna use this and text along path. So as you can see there, for some reason or another, instead of going along the path like this, it went like that for some reason. So it coincides with what we did when we did the circle as well. For some reason, instead of being spot on in terms of horizontal wise, it wasn't really, how do I say, it's not really 50% like that. It's not really in the center. Instead, it took a slight slanting to the right in this particular case, and I'm going to tell you why. But never mind, let's say we're going to use this, right? So what I'm going to do is, hopefully you still remember this part, right? So we're just going to change the path to selection, right? And then I'm just going to have this path invisible. I'm just going to create a new layer and just call it maybe text or something. Oopsie. Text, right? And I'm going to color it with a particular color which is a bit more dramatic. Let's say red. Okay. And edit, fill with background color. So we have that something like that. Now still with the outline there, I'm gonna create a new layer, and I'm just gonna call it text background, text BG. Okay. And I'm going to put this layer behind that text layer, and I'm just gonna grow the selection. Select and grow, right? And have it grow to a certain amount. Let's say for example 15 here. So I OK that. Right, so it grows to 15. And then I'm just going to fill that up. Edit, fill with foreground color. And so I have that kind of kaboom, right? So it makes sense to merge this layer down. And so I have a layer with a kaboom going like that. If I want to, I can do something like that. Rotate. And so I have this kind of a shape, right? This kind of a writing. So that's one way of doing it. But like I said, the path tool is something of a glitch, meaning that it's very glitchy in such a way that you might not get the result that you desire. So let's go with something that that I feel is a bit more predictable, right? So I'm just going to take this text and just bring it here, right? And just edit it a little bit. Here is where we're going to learn another tool that we haven't used before. I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm just going to edit and make this text box larger and put the text smack in the middle like that, right? Then I'm going to use this. It's called the cage transform. Cage transform, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a cage around this word that I'm going to transform, right? Just like that. So approximately a rectangle, maybe not really like a right-sided rectangle or anything like that, but it should be okay. Now, you want to be sharp about what you're doing, the properties of the tool you're using. For example, as of now, I'm using the cage transform. When I was doing the cage, I'm using create or adjust the cage. Once the cage is already there, then I want to choose deform the cage to deform the image. Then I can just do something like this, for example. Kaboom! Right? And something like that, for example. So I have it curvy like that in a more controlled manner, as opposed to this one, which is a bit more, a bit more uncontrolled or unpredictable. Let's say I'm happy with this. Now I'm just gonna choose that color, use the select by color tool, right, and then color it using a different color. Let's say red. Okay, right. Edit, fill with foreground color. As you can see here, again, even this tool is a bit more unpredictable, meaning that we have these, I don't know if you can see it, but we have this blinking area here. It means that there is some residue of the text there, so I'm just going to get rid of that. Right. Then again, I'm going to pick the color here, right? And I'm going to do the same thing here, meaning that I'm going to apply an outline. So Shift Control N, text background 02, right? Put the layer underneath it, and then select and grow, right? Okay. Choose this, and then edit, fill with foreground color, and so we have two kabooms here, right? Which might or might not be what you wish to do. Like, oh, sorry, right? So yeah, do remember to merge the layer down so that you get the same layer that you can manipulate in one go like that. All right. So next up is when we do comics, right? We'll have dialog boxes. We'll need to have dialog boxes. So I'm just going to create a dialog box. So a new layer, Shift Control N, and dialog box. Right. I'm just gonna make it smaller, maybe 500. Oopsie. 500 times 500 or something. Right. Okay, so it's a small new layer there. Just gonna move this layer here. Right. And first and foremost, I'm just gonna create a path. Just going to create a shape using this path tool, right? Remember, when you're joining 2 points inside a path, you want to press Control and then you join it, right? And then select, right? Go to path, so we can delete these two that we don't need anymore. Delete path and delete path. And we're going to this path, and we are going to transform it into a selection. Path to selection. Now it becomes a selection, right? And I'm going to use this ellipse select tool, and as you can see here, there are several modes. Here is where you can be sharp about the modes. There is replace current selection, add to the current selection, subtract, and so on. So I'm just going to use add to the current selection, and I'm just going to go ahead and add to this current selection just like that, right? Thereby turning into a dialog box like that. Right, so I'm just gonna then fill with foreground color just like that, right? And then select none. Oopsie, right? Before I select none, I'll just create another layer, right? And dialog box foreground, right? Okay, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and select and shrink it by maybe 4 pixels, right? And then edit, fill with background color, and then I just select none. Now I have a dialog box. Technically speaking, I can join the two together, merge down, right? Now I have a dialog box, okay, which I can manipulate freely like this, right? So if I want to enlarge it and so on, I can, right? Make it larger, scale, right, and so on, right? I can have it behind this and so on, right? So this is how we manipulate things in order for it to become a comic. Next